quote, trading jabs at Russia. And this, in the United States, they put these radar towers, big stations, up in Alaska and all the way across Alaska and down the off Europe. There was theoretically a line of radar that no plane could go through without being detected. They couldn't stop them, but you knew they were coming. And this was called the Duel Line, the Distant Early Warning Line. And it was in theory, if the Russians tried to send a bomber over to the United States, we would be aware of it when it crossed this line. Okay, well, part of it is out over the ocean where there's no way to control things, so we flew patrols out there with these airplanes that had radar, and as I recall, we had a range of 150 miles on the big radar. That I think I computed once how many millions of square miles we could look at each day on a patrol. But,
how high did you usually go?
For those flights, it depended on what the weather conditions were, but I will say usually between 10 and 7,000 feet, not real high. Yeah, then anyway, I was with that squadron, and then part of it, of the extension they called it, is that we would go up to Iceland. It would fly out of Reykjavik, Iceland, and on an extension of the Duel Line. It was just another little area up in there. We'd fly back and from there.
Where were you stationed at this point?
In Argentia, Newfoundland.
So now, you're in Newfoundland. Okay.
Yeah, the squadron was based at Newfoundland. And then we'd send planes up to operate out of Iceland for a little while.
And your wife was there and everything?
She was with me in Newfoundland, yes.
How did you guys like Newfoundland?
I'm there, Karen?
How did you like Newfoundland?
Oddly enough, as far as duty goes, it was called among many military officers of my vintage the kiss of death, promotion-wise. No, not real death-wise, but promotion-wise, because we were, my period in the service was at a time, now we're going back to 1943 and 45, when they were training a lot of pilots. Let's say 43. The war's right in the middle of the war as we know it, and nobody knew how long this thing was going to last, and they wanted to have a reserve of pilots. Right. So they trained a bunch of us. Well, suddenly they realized they got too many.
Right. The war ended.
We don't need it. So for anybody in my block, promotions started slowing down. Right. And so that those of us who, I was the lieutenant commander at the time, and I had been selected for a commander, but that was probably the end of the line for guys like me. And so when we got assigned to these kinds of squadrons among ourselves, it was called the kiss of death promotion-wise. It was good duty and all that. And like I say, our families were there. We basically enjoyed it. My daughter was she in high school or late grade school, as I recall? But she enjoyed it. On the base, the kids had a freedom they had never known before or since. Now the base is a closed military establishment, all gated. The kids could get on the bus, go any place they wanted on the base. Nobody bothered them, and they had friends in school, and everyone that I've talked to, the kids that have been there, they all had a good time. And the women kind of liked it too. It was a very knit community, but they all had exactly the same interests. They were cooped up in that little island that we were sitting on there. And basically, I think most people enjoyed that tour in Newfoundland.
Did it get kind of cold?
Yes, it did, but I don't think it ever got Minnesota cold.
Oh,
but I do have one picture on the 6th of June. I got a picture of our backyard when we had a snowstorm on the 6th of June. One of the incidents at Newfoundland that is nice social talk is, of course, we were a lot more into partying and stuff like that at the time. Liquor, real cheap, good gin and scotch and stuff, $1 a bottle. Well, that's neither. But ice-wise for getting ice for party drinks and stuff, that occasionally the icebergs would break off in the area and float into the bay. And if you could get out to an iceberg and get some of the ice off that iceberg and then use it in your drinks, it's very special in that in an iceberg air is trapped. So when you put the ice from an iceberg in a glass of water, it fizzes like soda water.
Oh, 'cause of-
And now there's no flavor to it, but it's just the air, the compressed air within the iceberg ice. And so we used to, when there were icebergs in the bay, we would go out and chip ice off the icebergs.
It's
And that was,
fizzy ice, huh?
yeah, it was a little bit unique.
I had never heard that.
Yeah, but I remember one of the neighbor ladies and I were out in a boat doing that same thing one day, and the iceberg, I'll say we got like from here to the porch away from the thing and go get some, and it started to roll over. And as you're aware that an iceberg, about 80% of it is below the water. And so when one tips, you want to be damn sure you're not over the part that it's coming up from the bottom. But we saw what was happening and just backed off and watched it. But it was, I thought, kind of exciting to see that. And it wasn't a real big one. I mean, the whole thing I don't think was the size of this house, but.
That's big enough.
Well, yeah, I mean, if it had picked we were just out in a small boat and stuff,
Yeah.
that it could have picked the boat up, no strain. But that was an interesting thing up in Iceland. The fishing was pretty good. Of course, lots of flights. Oh, but I will tell you. Oh, yes. I can remember up there one day. Now, of course, here I'm a full-fledged pilot and licensed to take that plane any place in the world and all that sort of stuff. But I'm up there one day doing some training with another pilot, and we're flying around Iceland and, I don't know, making landings, I don't know. But anyways, we came across the bay in for a landing. I saw a boat down on the water, and the guy was fishing down there. Now here I'm up in this $1 million airplane and stuff flying it, and I thought to myself, I'm sitting in the right seat, he's flying the thing. And I said, oh, geez, I wish I was down there on the bay fishing. And so, end of story there for the moment. X years later, after I'd retired, I'm now down in San Diego, and I'm getting ahead of the story here, but I ran a fishing boat for a number of years and took people out fishing as a commercial.
Yeah.
I've got a
Like a
Coast Guard
business, yeah.
license for blah, blah, for running boats like this with passengers and stuff. And I'm down there at San Diego, and I'm fishing off the end of the runway. Do you know San Diego area at all? Do you know North? Okay. Well, anyway, the runway coming into North Island comes in over the ocean, and I'm sitting out there not too far from shore in the ocean fishing with these people. When I'm sitting there, I look up, I hear a noise, look up, and here's one of those same airplanes that I was flying up in Newfoundland when I looked down at the water.
In there.
And I looked up at the water and said, geez, I wish I was up there flying. We're
never
never
happy, are you?
satisfied. We're never satisfied.
happy.
But I always thought that was a twist.
So you went to Iceland then too?
Yes, we went up
You
to
visited
Iceland.
Iceland, okay.
And we operated out of Reykjavik. Reykjavik is, I think, the next biggest town besides Keflavik, other way around. Reykjavik is the capital.
Yeah.
Keflavik is where the base was. And I think it's the number 2 city in Iceland. But it's about 60 miles or so from the capital, from Reykjavik. And we operated out of there and flew from there. Basically, our route was down toward the Azores. We went down off Spain. That's the route we would fly for this Duel Line extension, that they called it. And oddly enough, my weather up there can get sometimes kind of nasty and stuff. And of course, there's all the volcanoes and that midnight fire that I visited many things there. But the thing that I remember about that tour of duty, it has nothing to do with the tour of duty, that was we would get. Are you familiar with langusta? Okay. In theory, as I understand it, in Italy, langusta are any kind of a baby shrimp or a shrimp of a type. I'm not real certain what it is. But in Iceland, as I understood it, the langusta are baby lobsters.
Oh.
Okay. Well, I went down to where the town where we were, Keflavik, was basically just a little fishing town. And I went down there, and I remember buying a basket, a bushel, like a bushel basket full of these lobsters for $1. These little baby lobsters. And then I took them up to the BOQ and they cook them up there for some of our meals. And oh, they're absolutely delicious. I mean, oh boy, they're good. And now when you buy langosta in a restaurant or something, normally I think it's shrimp, but up there, as I recall it, it's baby lobsters. And it was, oh boy, it was good. Another thing, I remember Iceland. I used to go fishing and stuff when I was at any place where there's any fishing. But up in Iceland, I took a bus from, there was a public bus going from Keflavik over to Reykjavik, and I took it part way because in flying around there, I saw a lake, and there are many of them, on a quote moor or whatever they call them up there, couple miles off the highway. And so I got off the bus and had my gear, and I just walked over to this place to fish at this moor. And when I was going there, it's pretty bleak and desolate in lots of parts of Iceland. And I figured that, oh boy, here I'm at a spot where maybe no man has ever been here before. Now that's kind of stretching the point, I know. And so I came to the edge of this lake, and I'm up on a little rock. And water was down far, 6, 8 feet below, I don't recall, clear as a crystal. And I thought, oh, this is just, probably nobody ever been here, and here I've got a chance to fish here, how wonderful. And I looked down, beer cans in the bottom of the water. Had that happen once on an island off Mexico too, but it just kind of takes the wind out of your sails for that.
Like, oh, man.
But now, fortunately, as a society, at least in this country, we are much more aware of this type of destruction of nature that is so unnecessary and unheeded. And most people are more conscious of this now. But in those days, oh, they weren't. It was very sloppy. Many years later, even up in Canada, a common practice was coming back from camping or fishing, that the trash you had in your car, you just threw it out alongside the road in the woods. Now, into the woods and stuff. I won't say right along the highway, but on a deserted road. And over the years, it would disappear, and they rust and stuff. But of course, we don't do that. No, I don't think most people does that stuff anymore. But
Right.
But they did. That was the way the culture was. That's all. Well, okay, where are we? I'm sorry. This is nice.
Newfoundland and Iceland.
Okay. All right. And then. Well, basically the patrols were, like I said, we, again, probably 1 in 3, 1 in 4. It wasn't wartime, so I'm going to guess 1 in 4 at the most we flew. And did these patrols for these couple of years up there. And then from then on, I'd been up there for a little over 2 years, and they were looking at other transfers for me, and nothing came up that really appealed to me. I was given my commander rank while I was up there, and things. Anyway, that the family and I, we all talked promotion was probably dead. And I know part of the theory that we used, I hope it was logic, was that if I'm going to get out, I'm going to have to go to work. I mean, that retired pay is not enough to get by on raising a family and stuff. And so that if I'm going to do it, the younger I am when I do it, the better chance I'll have at finding, I'll say, what I consider proper employment and stuff like that. So I requested retirement, and it was granted. And I left Iceland in Newfoundland in 1962, was transferred back to the States at San Diego for a month or so, but just getting ready for retirement and stuff.
So you retired from the Navy in 62?
I'm sorry?
So you retired from the Navy in 62?
Yes, in 1962.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah,
part of it, our daughter
20-year
was,
career.
I don't think she'd started high school yet. And I know I mentioned to you how fortunate I felt of being able to be at the same high school for 4 years. And I thought if we have an opportunity to give her that same, I'll say, privilege, that I would like to do it. And so we came